Now, of course, it is widely believed that Robert Mueller intended to pass the investigation baton to impeachment-hungry House Democrats. But will the president stop Mueller in his tracks, or will special counsel get the last laugh like he's having a tickle party? Let's meet tonight's panel. He is on the Trump 2020 advisory board. Jason Meister is here, along with liberal talk radio host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall. And he's a comedian and part of the Problem podcast host. Find it wherever you find your podcast. Dave Smith is here, and he's going to be part of the solution tonight. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Wow, what a Thursday. Holy cow, the president just taking aim at Robert Mueller. I understand the president's frustration, and I believe he's behaving like someone who was wronged and accused of something that he didn't do, but he's got to lock it up and slow down a little bit.
But Kennedy, Mueller proved yesterday that he is conflicted. By punting on obstruction, he effectively basically put in front of the American people Attorney General Barr making the conclusion that there was no obstruction.
Which he knew was going to happen.
He knew that was going to happen,
and
it was a Machiavellian decision. What he did was he effectively chose Attorney General Barr because he knew that in the court of public opinion that Democrats would paint Attorney General Barr as a partisan under President Trump's thumb. And by doing that, he was effectively abdicating his responsibilities, which were to find crimes, prosecute crimes. Now, people will say that he can't prosecute crimes.
With the presumption of innocence.
With the presumption of innocence.
But that's not what happened here by his own admission in the press conference.
But people will say, Democrats will say, that he can't prosecute crimes, but he can find crimes. He can talk about crimes that were committed.
Sure.
And he doesn't have to prosecute them. He didn't do that. He had Attorney General Barr do it for him for that reason.
I can't fly, but I sure like to walk around wearing a pair of wings. That doesn't make any sense, Leslie, and it doesn't have to, because this whole thing is so confusing and crazy. But it's interesting because now the president, for the first time, seems really bothered by the word impeachment. What do you make?
He shouldn't be. Because history is on his side, and it's one of the reasons that Speaker Pelosi is saying, put the brakes on, folks, because when Bill Clinton was impeached, Republicans lost seats in the House and the Senate. Newt Gingrich, the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi's position currently, lost his job, had to step down, had to resign. Bill Clinton's ratings went through the roof. And I honestly think, as a Democrat, that if Democrats do proceed with impeachment, and you have the majority of the American public being against it, even though you have a majority of Democrats wanting it, and I think some of those Democrats...
It is 66 to 29%.
Right. But 72% of the Democrats, when you look at the numbers in the midterm and even after the election, want impeachment. I think some of them believe that means removal, and it doesn't.
You're exactly right.
Making him a one-term president
And that's the problem. It's like shooting a wild animal and wounding it. When you don't kill it, a shot of adrenaline goes through its body, making it far more dangerous, and that's what could happen here. I'm still trying to figure out what Robert Mueller thought he was going to accomplish with the press conference.
Well, I think he knows what he was going to accomplish, which is to cast a seed of doubt over this whole thing and kick it off to Congress. Look, Robert Mueller is a guy who, when he was FBI director, he testified in front of Congress to the American people and said that Saddam Hussein was going to give weapons to terrorists that he hated. He was going to give them weapons that he did not have.
Yes.
And even by his legacy, this was disgraceful. For a prosecutor to go on in front of the American people and say, I'm going to clear things up. I want to stick to the written report, but I'm going to have a press conference in which I say that I could not prove that I can't clear the president.
When does
this
that
is
ever
something
happen?
out of an Orwellian novel that a prosecutor would even say that. And then he's going to say...
You're admitting you're applying a different threshold.
Right. I couldn't prove the innocence of the person who I was investigating. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, even if we found crimes, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but I will tell you that I can't say that he didn't commit a crime. This and for transparency's sake, I won't be taking any questions.
Then what's the point of having special counsel at all? What's the point of having him here?
Why would
because
you not come out
the
and
point
say
is
this over the last 2
prosecution
years?
Or declination. It's either or. It's a live option.
And by the way,
you can't find this wiggly, squishy middle ground because it only further politicizes.
And he was appointed after Comey was fired for the obstruction charge. Yes. And he didn't even come out with anything about obstruction. It's unbelievable.
It's an outrage. All right, but if he did something wrong, I want to know about it. and we have the right to know about it. And if it was something that was so bad that his team was so conflicted, lay that out more overtly. You owe that to the American people. He wasted a bunch of money and a bunch of time, and unfortunately, that makes him a bit of a blowhard. And I love being a blowhard. That's right. Welcome back. Legendary actress Meryl Streep flipping the script on the liberal Hollywood Me Too narrative. Last night, the three-time Oscar winner spoke out against the term toxic masculinity, during a Q&A with Vanity Fair, saying, quote, "We hurt our boys by calling something toxic masculinity because women can be pretty effing toxic. It's toxic people. We're all on the boat together. We've got to make it work." Of course, the term toxic masculinity has been used more and more as a rallying cry for the left, often to target the white men. So is Meryl Streep right to take a stand? The party panel is back. Jason Meister, Leslie Marshall, and Dave Smith. Leslie, I will start with you because I think this is really interesting. I know you're a mom, and you know I look around. I've got girls, but if I had boys, I think it would be very tough trying to guide them through the world where so much seems to be dead set against them. And I think here she's absolutely right.
You know, today I was shopping for souvenirs for my kids because I have mommy guilt from traveling, and I know you can relate to that. I have a son and a daughter, so I can speak to this. Everywhere you go, there's girl power, and, you know, girls this. And it's not just unicorns. And there's a lot of slogans out there for female empowerment for young girls. And you just don't see that for men. So I do agree with Meryl Streep on this because, I mean, there are toxic people. We don't need to break it down into gender. We don't need to me, just stop the name calling. We need to be better than that. And in addition, I think we really do already have terms for toxic masculinity. Aren't misogynist and sexist already covered? Doesn't that cover that? I think it does.
Yeah, I think it does too. And I know you have a baby daughter, and it's a crazy time. Like, it is a tough time to be a fella, and you wouldn't necessarily expect this from Meryl Streep, because if you remember at the Golden Globes when she was accepting the Cecil B. DeMille Lifetime Achievement Award, she just spent the whole speech, instead of celebrating her incredible career, taking potshots at the president. So I was glad to see her use a little bit of rationality.
Yeah, I was surprised. I actually think in her world this is somewhat of a dangerous opinion to take, even though it should be like obvious to anyone who's, I don't know, 10 years old that this is a correct statement. But I do have a daughter, but I mean, I don't think that the world is men versus women. I mean, we are kind of all in this together. And the truth is, if you don't have, like you were saying, there's this girl power thing, but there's no boy power. There's no, and if you don't have anything to channel male energy into, it goes into very bad directions.
Yeah, and you're making them feel bad about something.
You have like people who are just lost in video games and fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, male energy is very important to society, if people haven't noticed this. And so it should be channeled into a constructive direction.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because at my daughter's old elementary school, they didn't allow the boys to run in the playground.
Oh my God.
And it's like, what are you doing?
I remember my little brother, and this is like 20 years ago, I remember they would threaten suspension if you had an action figure that had like a knife or something like that. We won't let boys be boys anymore in this country. And I don't mean boys be boys in like some like...
Ah, here you go, have some scotch and spank someone and rub the clavicles, Joe Biden.
You could do worse.
Believe me.
You need
my staff upstairs on the 16th floor, they do much worse.
Having a very high-strung son, you need the kids to run around, and boys sometimes need to just run it off.
But they're vilified for that. So will Meryl Streep be forced to apologize the way that Bernie Sanders was, saying all lives matter?
I'm sure she will, because Hollywood is under that PC culture. But look, there's nothing toxic about masculinity or femininity. There are differences. And I have a boy and a girl like you do. And my boy plays with tools and my girl plays with dolls. And I'm not going to stop them from doing that. I'm going to allow them to play with whatever they want to play with. And if a parent wants to decide that they're going to force their daughter to play with tools and their son to play with dolls, then let them do that. I'm going to do with what I want to do with my children, and they're going to play with whatever they want to play with.
Let them play their own game. But I will say this. The men didn't make the World Cup, and the women are dominating. And soccer is a beautiful game. And that's
because girls rule, right?
Thank you guys so much. Always good to see all of you. Dave, Leslie, and Jason.